They dumped my medals into the gutter right there on Sycamore Street like they were trash. My Purple Heart. My brother's flag. 26 years of service spit on by a cop who didn't even flinch. And behind him stood the real tyrant Chief of Paula Gentry, arms crossed, sunglasses on clipboard, clutched like a weapon. All because I installed a mailbox with my name on it. They thought I'd stay silent. They thought an old black veteran would bow. But they were wrong. I didn't just stand, I made the whole damn country listen. And when the truth came out, their empire of control crumbled right in front of them. This is not just a story about injustice. It's about what happens when dignity fights back and wins. He kicked the box right into the gutter. My medals, those precious slices of metal I'd earned with blood, sweat, and sand, clattered onto the asphalt like discarded trash. Bronze Star Purple Heart and a folded flag that once draped my brother's coffin, now soaked in rainwater and street oil. A boot came down next to them. His boot. His badge gleamed under the siren's Officer T. Harlan, and behind him stood the real face of this town. Chief Paula Gentry, arms crossed, lips, curled sunglasses on, despite the clouds, her clipboard tight against her bulletproof vest. "You people always want to parade around your glory days," she muttered, like I hadn't already lost enough. I couldn't move. Not because I was frozen in shock, but because I physically couldn't. My right knee, crushed in Kandahar, had long since surrendered to a metal brace. I stood there trembling, my hands clenched, watching 20 years of sacrifice stomped under wet gravel. All because of a mailbox. That's what started it. A damn mailbox. But I'll get to that. My name is Ronald Pop Gates. I'm 63 years old, a black man, a veteran of 2 wars. I live in a worn-down, one-story house on the corner of Sycamore, and 8th used to be a white neighborhood, still is mostly. I moved in after my wife passed away. Quiet. Clean. I thought I could plant tomatoes in the backyard and teach the neighborhood kids about engine repair. But then came the HOA notices. First, it was the unauthorized flagpole. Then, it was the wind chimes too loud. Then, the disorderly arrangement of potted plants on my porch. I removed them all. I complied, hoping it would buy me peace. But it didn't. One afternoon, I installed a new mailbox, painted it matte black, real sharp, just like the ones we had back on base. I even mounted a small plaque, Sergeant Ronald Gates, U.S. Army Ret. The next day, a notice appeared in my door, crack non-standard mailbox subject to removal. I filed an appeal, no response. Then I called, got transferred 5 times, hung up on twice, so I left it. The footage that would later go viral started rolling on a Thursday morning. I was wearing my brown wool coat, the one with the faded military patches stitched on both shoulders. My niece, a film student, happened to be visiting. She was filming B-roll for a project capturing life in forgotten America. And she captured every second. The officers pulled up like I was smuggling arms, 3 squad cars, 2 bikes, 1 armored truck that looked like it belonged in Fallujah. They didn't knock. They stormed. "Step aside, sir." "Step aside now," one of them shouted as they reached my porch. For what I asked, leaning on my cane. Officer Harlan shoved past me like I was a broomstick. Another began ripping the mailbox from the concrete. Sparks flew. Concrete cracked. Birds scattered from the rooftop. "Hey," I yelled. "I filed an appeal, you can't." That's when they found the box in my hallway. A plain cardboard box. Labeled Awards plus Medals. Pop's stuff. I'd been planning to mount them on a shadow board, maybe hang it in the hallway near my Purple Heart citation. Without warning, Harlan picked it up, walked outside, and dumped it. The wind caught the flag. It unfurled on the curb. A silence hit the street that not even the sirens could fill. My niece gasped, her camera lens trembling. I fell to my knees not because of the leg, because something inside me broke. "You can't do this," I said. "That's my honor. That's my brother's memory. That's my soul in there." Officer Harlan just shrugged. Chief Gentry, arms folded like she was watching a sitcom, finally spoke. "If you didn't want to be subject to HOA code enforcement, Mr. Gates, maybe you shouldn't have moved into an organized neighborhood." And that was it. They left me in the rain. My medals in the gutter. My legacy bleeding under dirty runoff. But I wasn't alone. The neighbors watched. Some closed their curtains, but a few stayed. One of them was Jonah. Jonah Alvarez, a 19-year-old mixed kid from 3 houses down, came out with his phone shaking. "I got it all, Mr. Gates," he said. "They can't erase this." I didn't respond. How could I? For all my years surviving war zones, I never felt humiliation like this. In battle, you knew where your enemies were. Here, they wore badges, wielded laws, and smiled while they tore you apart. I sat on the curb, rain washing the grime off my medals, a folded flag resting in my lap like a wounded child. That night, the video hit Twitter, then TikTok, then YouTube. Police dump black veterans' medals. HOA crackdown goes too far. And just like that, something ignited. The town didn't sleep. Cars began to park across my lawn. Strangers brought candles. Someone printed my army photo and taped it to the lamp post. A chorus of voices started building, echoing across Sycamore Street like a rising storm. But I didn't know what to make of it yet. I was still staring at that cracked sidewalk, still wondering if I had the strength to fight again. Because make no mistake, this was war, and this time the battlefield wasn't overseas. It was home. I wasn't always a fighter. Not like this. Most people look at me now, gray-bearded, stooped, quiet, and assume I was born hard, that I came out of the womb with fists clenched and jaw tight. But I wasn't. My mother used to say I had the softest eyes of all her sons. Said I smiled even in my sleep. Said I'd be a preacher, not a soldier. But life had other plans. I enlisted in 1980 not out of patriotism, but because I needed a way out of Mississippi. The cotton fields, the rusted pickup trucks, the feeling that no matter how fast you ran the past, always outran you. Boot camp hardened me. War finished the job. I saw things in Iraq and later Afghanistan that don't belong in daylight. But I did my job. I followed orders, saved who I could, carried who I had to. I came home in pieces, some literal, some not. But I came home, and I did what every soldier dreams of doing after war. I built peace. A wife, a house, a workshop full of tools. A life so normal it felt like fiction. Her name was Marlene. She had a voice like summer wind and skin that glowed warm like syrup under the sun. She loved gospel music and hated unwashed dishes. We were married 24 years. She died in her sleep aneurysm. One moment we were sipping coffee by the window. The next, I was standing over her whispering, "Wake up," over and over like prayer might reverse time. It didn't. So I sold the house, packed the memories, and came here. Sycamore Street. I just wanted peace. That's all. I bought the smallest house on the block. No kids, no pets. My days were quiet, sunrise coffee, reading the paper, and sometimes sitting in the garage fixing engines nobody asked me to fix. The local boys came by often. I taught them how to check oil patch tires, rebuild carburetors. Jonah was the brightest among them. He reminded me of my brother. Willie Gates was a better man than me. A better soldier, too. He jumped on a grenade in 2004 to save his unit. The flag they handed me at his funeral is the same one they dumped into the street like trash. I kept that flag on a special shelf for years until I decided to make a memory box. A place to keep every scrap of our lives. His dog tags, my medals, letters we wrote each other. A photo of us back at Camp Victory, arm in arm, covered in dirt and grinning like fools. That was the box they dumped. The day after it happened, I didn't get out of bed. Neighbors knocked. I didn't answer. The TV played clips of my humiliation on repeat. My phone buzzed with interview requests, offers to share my story. But I had no words. I was angry, yes, but deeper than that, I was ashamed. Ashamed I hadn't seen it coming. Ashamed I let them take everything without lifting a hand. I kept replaying the moment Harlan kicked the box. That hollow thump, that smug look, that clipboard clutched in Gentry's arms like it held divine judgment. I thought maybe if I stayed still long enough it would all pass. But it didn't, because the world had seen it now, and the world didn't forget. By Sunday morning, a group had formed across my lawn. Candles, posters, chants. A woman knelt on my steps and whispered, "My father was a vet, too. What they did to you, they did to all of us." And that did something to me. It woke something up. Not the soldier, not the fighter, but the man who still believed in honor. I stepped out for the first time in 2 days. The sun was high. I was in my flannel shirt cane in hand. The group went silent when they saw me. "I didn't ask for this," I said softly. A man in the back called out, "No, sir, but you deserved better." I nodded. Then I walked across the lawn past the signs and sat beside Jonah on the porch swing. "You still got that video?" I asked. He pulled out his phone. "Good," I said. "We're going to need it." That afternoon, I dug through my garage until I found the old binder legal code's veteran rights HOA restrictions. I had once thought it was useless clutter. Now it felt like ammunition. I didn't know it yet, but I was preparing for war again. But this time the battlefield had no sand, no barbed wire, only courtrooms and cameras. My niece, bless her heart, returned the next day with her laptop and a vision. She set up a press site, justice4pop.com. Uploaded the footage, the documents, the HOA letters, even a picture of me in uniform beside Marlene's garden. "You need a voice," she said, "and this is how we fight now." By Tuesday, the news vans came. By Wednesday, I was on the evening report. But the one visit I didn't expect came Thursday morning. Pastor Elroy Bennett. My chaplain, back in 2003, stood on my porch in a white suit and tears in his eyes. "Ron," he said, "you might be the spark this town's been waiting for." I didn't answer him. I just opened the door, because in that moment I understood they hadn't just disrespected me. They'd desecrated every black soldier who ever came home in pieces. Every vet told to sit down, be quiet, and stay grateful. They poked a sleeping lion, and now the lion was wide awake. You'd think a town like Faircrest would hide its rot behind smiles and clean sidewalks, but not Chief Paula Gentry. She strutted in broad daylight, dark sunglasses, always on, even indoors, like she ruled a kingdom, not a precinct. A gold chain peeked from beneath her collar, always just enough to show wealth, not faith. She didn't yell. She didn't need to. Her voice came low and tight like the click of a loaded chamber. She ran this town the way generals run a war, merciless, quiet, efficient. And everyone feared her. She wasn't elected. Nobody voted her in. She came with the new mayor, some Harvard kid with a winning smile and dead eyes. They called it a cleanup campaign. What it really meant was get rid of anyone who makes the neighborhood look less than perfect. And I did. I was a problem in their blueprint, a scar on their uniformity. A black man with a limp and medals didn't fit the brochure. They needed me gone. And when the HOA couldn't pressure me out, Paula used the badge. See, in this town, the HOA wasn't just nosy neighbors. It was a legal web. President of the HOA, Greg Stanmore, was also on the city planning board. His wife ran the newspaper. Their cousin, Judge Lively, the one who dismissed 3 tenant harassment cases last fall without blinking. It was all connected, a net with no holes. They called it enforcement. I called it warfare with a smile. And Officer Travis Harlan. He was her sword. Young white military buzz cut the kind of jawline you'd cast in a war movie. But no war had ever touched him. His war was power. He wore his badge like armor, but his eyes, they had no soul. Just protocol. He was the one who dumped my medals. But Paula, she ordered it. The next week, after the footage went viral, she held a press conference. Not to apologize, to double down. We are a lawful, order-based community, she said into the cameras. We followed the protocol in addressing a violation. No further comment at this time. Behind her, the American flag fluttered. The irony choked me. No further comment. As if my dignity was just paperwork. That night, I attended my first HOA meeting. It was held in the community hall, a polished, windowless room with white plastic chairs and lukewarm coffee. The crowd parted as I entered. Some nodded. Others stared. Gentry wasn't there. She didn't need to be. Greg Stanmore ran the show. Mr. Gates, he greeted me, smiling too wide. Didn't expect you. I'm not here for pleasantries, I replied. He motioned for me to sit. Let's keep this civil. You want civil. I stood tall, letting my cane thud the ground once. Civil would have been knocking before entering my home. Civil would have been asking before discarding a man's history. You violated Code 7.3a, he said smoothly. Non-conforming mailbox design and unauthorized display of personal commendations on communal property. My porch is not communal property, I said, and my commendations are not decorations. He blinked, lips twitching. There are processes. Spare me. You don't want process. You want obedience. The room was dead silent. A young woman in the back, a new neighbor, I think, whispered. He's right. Greg's eyes flicked toward her. The mask slipped for just a moment. There it was. Control. That's all this was about. A black man, decorated in combat, refusing to shrink. That terrified them more than any gun. So they tried to erase me. One ordinance at a time. I walked out of that meeting knowing something they didn't. They still thought I was alone. They were wrong, because people were watching now. From other states, from military bases, from schools and churches and streets I've never been to. I was no longer just Pop Gates from Sycamore Street. I was a symbol, and symbols don't go down easy. 3 days later, I received an envelope. No stamp, just dropped on my porch. Inside, a letter from the city council. They were reviewing my behavior. That's when I realized they weren't retreating. They were escalating. Paula Gentry appeared at my house the next morning. No sirens this time. Just her SUV blacked out, idling quietly at the curb. She stepped out in heels that never touched mud. "Mr. Gates," she said, voice low. "Let's talk." I said nothing. "I don't like what's happening," she continued. "You've stirred something bigger than you can handle." "You dumped my brother's flag in the street," I replied. "So no, I don't think I stirred it." I think you did. She crossed her arms. You could sue, I know, or go on another broadcast, but this could end quietly. You get a formal apology. We let you reinstall the box. We call it even. No, I said. She blinked. You want to end this quietly because you're scared of what it sounds like loud. For the first time, her voice cracked. You don't want to make enemies here. I stepped closer, cane in hand, not as a weapon, but as a statement. I've already had enemies. In Iraq, in Afghanistan, and they all had more spine than you. She stared. No words. Then she turned and walked. But I saw it. In her stride. That moment of doubt. That flicker of fear. She didn't expect me to resist. She didn't expect me to rise. But I was a quiet warrior. And the quiet ones, we don't shout. We endure. Then we strike. Some wounds don't bleed. They ache. Slow, constant, invisible. Like a hum beneath the skin that never quiets. That's how I felt the day I stood in front of City Hall. It had been 1 week since Paula Gentry walked off my porch and pretended she still held the upper hand. 1 week since her department left my medals rotting in the gutter like food scraps. The rain had stopped. But something darker had started flowing through the veins of Faircrest. People were whispering. People were watching. And then someone lit the match. It was a retired Air Force colonel from 3 towns over. He drove 2 hours just to knock on my door. Silver hair chest like a barrel, a limp that matched mine. His eyes were heavy like he'd buried more men than medals. He handed me a frame. Inside a photograph of his father. Another black vet. Tuskegee Airman. They tried to evict him in '62 for flying a flag too big, he said. This is yours now. I didn't speak. I just stared at that photo at the legacy, staring back. That afternoon, I went online and posted the full story. Not just the video. Not just the headlines. The whole truth, my life. My brother, the letter, the HOA, never responded to the clip of Chief Gentry threatening me in my driveway. I wrote every word myself. Within 24 hours, it had 500,000 shares. And then the flood began. Veterans, teachers, students, old women from Florida with husbands long gone. People who'd never met me poured into Sycamore Street like it was the site of something sacred. They didn't just light candles this time. They brought folding chairs, tents, banners. Respect our veterans painted across entire trucks. One guy even had his Jeep wrapped with my photo and the caption, "He served." They spat. I tried to tell them to go home. They wouldn't. And part of me didn't want them to. But then came the crackdown. On the 3rd night, cops marched in. They said we were violating a noise ordinance at 7 p.m. Said the candles were a fire hazard. Said the banners blocked the sidewalk. Said it was unauthorized assembly. They tore down signs. They pushed kids. And they found me, standing in the center, surrounded by people who would not sit. "You're inciting unrest," one of them told me. "No," I said. "You did that the moment you stomped on my dignity." That's when it happened. A young black woman, couldn't have been older than 22, stood in front of me holding the flag they had once dumped in the street. She held it to her chest like armor. Officer Harlan approached. Same sneer. Same hands twitching toward violence. And before I could stop him, he snatched the flag from her arms and spit on it. Dead silence. Time stopped. And in that stillness my voice broke free. "You just spat on every single soul who died for that cloth." Harlan smirked. "It's just fabric." "No," I said. "It's every letter I ever wrote to my mother, hoping I'd live to see her again. It's my brother's last breath. It's the silence on Memorial Day. It's the empty boots, the folded casket, the 21-gun salute. It's not fabric. It's sacred. And then the girl screamed. Not a scream of fear, a scream of war. Others joined her, chanting, crying, singing. The officers pulled back, overwhelmed, outnumbered, exposed. Someone live-streamed the whole thing. 10 million views by dawn. The next morning, national news outlets called. So did the Pentagon. A retired general offered to testify if I sued. But I didn't want money. I wanted dignity. I wanted honor returned. I wanted accountability. That afternoon, the mayor made a statement. He tried to frame it as a misunderstanding. Said, "We regret that emotions have overtaken reason in this situation." I stared at the screen and said, "No, it wasn't emotion that brought us here. It was silence. Their silence. Their denial. And that silence had broken." That evening, I gathered every piece of what they tried to destroy. The cracked metals, the stained flag, the rusted mailbox they yanked from the concrete. I carried them all to the community square, and with trembling hands I set up a table. No words, no signs. Just the truth laid bare for all to see. People gathered again. They looked. They wept. Even some of my white neighbors came. One of them, Mrs. Lantham, the woman who used to turn away when I waved, laid a single rose on the table. "I'm sorry," she said. "We should have stood with you sooner." I nodded. Then I looked across the street and saw him, Greg Stanmore, standing stiff, his jaw clenched, his face pale like he'd seen a ghost. Because he had, the ghost of power losing its grip. He turned and walked away. But the camera saw him, and this time the world did too. I didn't sleep that night. Not from fear, from fire. Not the kind that burns buildings. The kind that ignites from within. The kind you spend your whole life trying to suppress until someone spits on your flag, kicks your soul into the gutter, and smiles like they did you a favor. I sat alone in the dark, the only light coming from a single desk lamp in my garage. Around me were reminders of every battle I'd fought both abroad and here at home. Rusted tools, photos of my unit. My Purple Heart still dented from the street cleaned, but never the same. And then there was the letter, folded twice, signed by Judge Lively. Notice of compliance review subject, Ronald Gates. They wanted to revoke my home ownership. Said I had incited civil disruption. Cited obscure ordinances about community integrity. I read it 3 times. Then I reached for the old duffel bag in the corner. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside a stack of journals, my discharge papers, and a small USB drive labeled Willie, 2004. I plugged it in. It was a video I hadn't seen in over a decade. My brother sitting in his bunk, grinning like a damn fool. "If you're watching this, it means I didn't make it," he said, eyes bright. "Don't get soft on me, Pop. Don't let 'em turn your silence into consent. If they spit on your boots, make 'em choke on your words." He winked. Then he added, "Make 'em remember." I clenched my fist so tight the bones ached. That was the moment I knew I wouldn't just defend my honor. I'd burn down their lies with the truth. And I wouldn't be alone. The next morning, I called a meeting. But not at City Hall. At my house. We pulled out folding chairs, turned the garage into a war room. Jonah, my niece, a retired paralegal named Doris from 2 blocks over. A former Marine who now taught social studies. And a local reporter who'd once been fired for covering police misconduct. We don't just react anymore, I told them. We build a case. We called it Operation Backbone. My niece started combing through HOA policies. Jonah built a timeline with videos, texts, and eyewitness accounts. Doris drafted a lawsuit. We filed Freedom of Information requests for every HOA decision over the last 5 years. And we found patterns. Disproportionate enforcement on black homeowners, excessive fines, unjust evictions, Dozens of people came forward. They'd been silent until now, until someone stood, until I stood. Every night we met, every day more joined. By week's end, we had affidavits footage, and, most damning of all, a leaked memo from Paula Gentry herself, dated 6 months earlier. Subject line property cleansing strategy. Target list. Internal use only. My name was on it. So were 3 other black homeowners. There it was, the smoking gun. We knew what to do. The day of the hearing, I wore my full dress uniform. Stiff, old, tight across the shoulders. But it still fit. People lined the courthouse steps holding signs. Honor vets. Fire Gentry. And this is our street, too. I didn't speak to the cameras. I walked inside with my head high and my story intact. Judge Lively sat on the bench gavel, already in hand. Across the aisle, Greg Stanmore looked smaller now. Paula wasn't beside him. She was in the back, watching, waiting, hoping I'd choke. The hearing began. Doris read our case. Discrimination. Abuse of authority. Violation of Federal Veteran Protection Acts. Then she played the video. The medals, the flag, the spit. You could hear people gasp, even in the hallway. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't bring notes. I brought truth. I fought for this country, I said voice firm. I bled for it. Buried my brother under its flag. And I came home not for applause, but for peace. But when peace becomes privilege, and justice wears a name tag, then I say enough. Judge Lively tried to interrupt. I didn't let him. They didn't just try to take my mailbox, I said. They tried to erase me. And that should terrify you. Because if they can do that to a man like me, what's stopping them from doing it to you? I finished. The room was silent. For a moment, nothing moved. Then something miraculous happened. Applause. From the back, then the sides, then the entire room. The judge banged his gavel. Order, but it was too late. The silence they had relied on for years was gone. People were awake now. That night, the footage played on national television. But more importantly, the city council called an emergency meeting. And the mayor, he resigned before it started. They say courage is loud. But I know better. Real courage. It's quiet. It's a father stepping into a courtroom filled with people who once crossed the street to avoid him. It's a girl barely out of college, standing in front of armed men with nothing but a flag. It's every person who spoke when they were told to stay silent. And now it was our turn to be loud. The City Hall chamber was packed beyond capacity. People sat on stairs leaned against walls. Reporters filled every corner mic's hot lenses focused. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of us. Every story they'd tried to erase. Every voice they'd silenced. Every black homeowner fined for a flower pot. Every soldier dismissed as inconvenient. They were all in that room, and across from us sat the architects of it all. Greg Stanmore looking pale and aged in his polished suit. Judge Lively, lips tight, eyes darting, and Chief Paula Gentry, still in uniform, still hiding behind those sunglasses. But for the first time she didn't look invincible. She looked cornered. The council chair opened the floor. I rose. My name is Ronald Gates. I served this country for 26 years. My brother died in Iraq. His flag was dumped in a gutter by the very people sworn to protect us. I turned to the crowd. But this is not about one man. It's about the system. A system that mistakes silence for consent. A system that sees color as threat. A system that let a clipboard and a badge destroy honor. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out my Bronze Star cracked tarnished. This was earned with blood, I said, holding it up, and it was tossed aside like garbage. But what they didn't know, what they still don't know, is that you can't bury dignity. It grows roots. Applause broke out, but I wasn't done. We gathered evidence, records, statements, leaked emails, a list handwritten by chief gentry of residents to be phased out. All of them black. All of them decorated, educated, or loud. Gasps rippled. Council members leaned forward. Greg Stanmore stood. This is slander. I cut him off. This is truth. Then I turned to Paula. Chief Gentry, I said. Would you like to explain your memo? She didn't move. Or the threats you made to my family? No answer. The council chair spoke, voice grave. Chief Gentry, we will recess briefly. I recommend you retain counsel. But she didn't even blink, because bullies don't imagine they'll fall until the floor beneath them gives way. During the break, something unexpected happened. A woman approached me in the hallway. Mid-40s, suit jacket, calloused hands. I'm Karen Lively, she said quietly. Judge Lively's daughter. I'm sorry, she whispered. My father. He protected them. He knew. We all did. But I didn't know it would go this far. She handed me a flash drive. Emails, she said. Years' worth. I looked her in the eyes. You can still do the right thing, I said. She nodded, lips quivering. That's why I'm here. The second session was fire. My niece projected the emails. Lines highlighted in red. Remove mailbox per Gentry. Use noise ordinance to nudge out Gates. Make an example of him. No one could deny it anymore. The council chair leaned into his mic. In light of the evidence, we are suspending Chief Gentry effective immediately pending investigation. The HOA board is dissolved. A special election will be held. Judge Lively's involvement will be reviewed by State Ethics Commission. The room erupted. Gentry stood slowly. This is political theater, she spat. I stood too. No, Chief. This is accountability. And then she did something no one expected. She took off her sunglasses, and I saw her eyes. They were terrified. Not of me, of everyone finally seeing her for what she was. Outside, the square had filled. Veterans, teachers, kids with hand-painted signs. The news anchors called it the Gates Movement. But I didn't want my name on it. I didn't fight for fame. I fought for respect. And now we had it. That night, Jonah found me sitting on my porch. You did it, Pop. No, I said. We did. He held out something in his hands. The flag. Freshly cleaned. Folded with care. I think it's time we raise it again. I nodded. Together we walked to the pole. Together we raised it. And for the first time in years, the wind felt right. I never expected to live through a war twice. But this time, I got to see what victory looks like with my own eyes. No parades, no marching bands, just justice. The kind that marches quietly through a town square where they once told me to take down my flag. The kind that replaces fear with dignity and silence with song. It began with a simple sound footsteps, not boots, not riot gear, just neighbors walking side by side. It was the first Saturday of spring, 2 weeks after Chief Gentry was suspended, and 1 week since Judge Lively retired under health reasons. The city council had issued a formal apology, and for the first time, those words actually held weight, because they came with action. HOA elections were held publicly with oversight. Policies were rewritten, ordinances re-examined, and the new head of enforcement, a retired vet named Maria Jefferson, a black woman, a widow, a fighter, just like me. And today, she walked beside me, her hand gently gripping my elbow, as we approached the new plaque being installed at the base of the community flagpole, in honor of SGT Ronald Gates. and all those who served may respect never be optional. The mayor read it aloud, but I didn't hear his voice. I heard my brothers. Make 'em remember. And we did. The crowd that gathered wasn't angry anymore. They were hopeful. Veterans from all branches came, some in wheelchairs, some in full-dress blues. Teachers, grandparents, students with signs that read, "Integrity looks like this and thank you, Pop." Even those who once stayed silent showed up. One woman, tears in her eyes, handed me a medal. My husband never got his ceremony, she said. But today, it feels like he did. I held her hand. "This isn't just for me," I whispered. "This is for everyone who was ever told to disappear." Later that afternoon, something beautiful happened. Jonah organized a youth project, the Honor Wall. Every child in the neighborhood had painted a tribute flags, portraits, letters. They mounted them on wooden panels around the park. One boy, no older than 7, painted me standing beside a giant heart. Underneath it read, "Pop saved the block." I laughed through tears. That night, as the sun dipped low, the flag I once thought would never fly again waved proudly above the square. And for the first time, it wasn't just a symbol of what we lost. It was a promise of what we'd reclaimed. In the weeks that followed, the story reached even further. National media called it the Faircrest Reckoning. A congressional panel requested I testify on HOA reform. Even the Department of Veterans Affairs sent a letter of recognition. But the greatest reward, a knock on my door. A young man, trembling, holding a discharge letter. "They treated me like dirt, Mr. Gates," he said. "But watching you fight back, it gave me hope. Can you help me?" I nodded. "Come in." Because the fight wasn't over. It never is. But now I knew I wasn't fighting alone. People ask me what I learned through all this. I tell them this: silence is dangerous. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand even with a cane, even with a broken heart. Because when one man stands, it gives others the courage to rise. And when the people rise, justice has no choice but to march. As I sit on my porch now, the sun casting gold across Sycamore Street, I see children laughing, neighbors waving, wind catching the flag above my garage. I don't hear sirens anymore. I hear birds. I hear freedom. I hear peace. Not the peace you're handed, the kind you fight for, the kind you build, the kind you pass down. And when I close my eyes, I hear Willie again, not from a battlefield. From right beside me. "You did good, Pop." In the end, justice didn't come from titles or badges. It came from truth, from standing when it was hardest, from refusing to be erased. I didn't fight for revenge, I fought for respect. For every veteran, every neighbor, every voice that was ever told to be quiet. Because the meaning of life isn't just to survive, it's to stand. To speak, to make sure your dignity doesn't disappear with silence. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, inspired, or gave you hope, don't scroll away. Subscribe to our channel for more real, powerful stories that reveal what others try to hide. Comment below. What would you do if this happened on your street? Turn on notifications so you never miss a moment when the truth needs a witness. Together, we're not just telling stories. We're making sure they're never forgotten.